This is a quick note. This re-upload of this review of Ocean's 8 is to include a re-edit of the score. So the review is the same, I've just changed my score. You want to do it?
Yeah.
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 Yeah. Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah. God. How many times do you need me to say it? Right, get into bed. Alright, fine, just don't slap me again. Jesus.
You keep saying you got
Oh, Daph,
something
this
for me.
feels so good. Oh, I know.
Something you call love,
Oh,
but
God.
confess.
Oh, you horny young
You've
woman.
been a mess
Oh,
where you shouldn't have been a mess in.
You go on, stay.
And now someone else
Say,
is
motherfucker,
getting to know
I
your
dare you,
best.
motherfucker. You
These boots
whore.
are made for walking,
and
that's just what they'll
not
do.
that one. No.
One of these days, these boots are gonna walk
I meant
all
slut.
over you.
There you go. How's that any better? It's not as nasty. Are you sure? Sure. It's also more descriptive. If you say so. Let's talk about you
Keep
in this
lying
section,
when
really?
you ought to be
The film's
truthing.
already failed the Brexit
And you
test,
keep
or whatever it's
losing
called.
when you ought
Even
to
though that applies for
not
TV, but it kind of failed anyway.
You keep saving when you ought to be a changing.
You know, I just got to
Now what's right
go
is
do a
right,
thing.
but you ain't been
I'll just
right
hang
yet.
up the edited edge first.
These boots
you
are
say
made
so,
for
sweetie.
walking, and that's just what they'll do.
Quickly, let's just
One of
talk
these
about-
days, these boots are gonna walk all over you.
Are all your family like this? Yes. Makes sense. Hello ladies and gentlemen, Nick here and welcome to my review of Ocean's 8. Which is a all-female led spin-off to the Ocean's trilogy, which I've got the DVDs of. They're over there. They'll be coming over for the ranking, the Ocean's film ranking, besides the original from the 60s. So all the George Clooney and Sandra Bullock Ocean's films ranking. Just adjusting this. Oh. Anyway, I've seen this film twice now. I was only going to go and see it once at the cinema and then get it on DVD, but went second time because I was instructed to go again, not to see this particular film, but just to go to the cinema to get out of the house for a few hours for a bit. So I went to see this one again to get my thoughts. So the first time was on Monday the 18th and the second time on Tuesday the 19th. And on Monday the 18th, it was not only is that the first day it was in cinemas, well, the previews at least, at my cinema, but it was I also got the first showing of the day. So I got the first showing of first showing at my cinema. And it was there wasn't actually many people there, although there was quite a few more people the next day at the same time. So then again, Tuesday's Safer Day Tuesday at my cinema. So Ocean's 8, another heist movie, but this time I actually quite enjoyed it. I also rewatched the Ocean's films last week in preparation for this, but I'll get around to those in the ranking. But this film, I will say, it's actually really good. It's surprisingly pretty good. It's a hell of a lot better than Logan Lucky from last year. Oh my goodness, that one was just boring. I think the thing that the problem with that one is that the characters, maybe besides the Logan brothers themselves, weren't actually that interesting. Props to Daniel Craig for his performance as Joe Bang, but his character wasn't that interesting. And props for acting all around, but only the Logan brothers brothers I actually cared about personally, on a character level. Maybe a small extent to the sister, but not really. But besides the two main characters, and maybe the sister and Joe, didn't really care. But I really like the characters from the Oceans trilogy, and I like the characters in this film. So if you have good characters or likable characters, even if they're criminals, you can still at least have a good time. In one way, at least you know them. The other thing is that whilst it does take a while to get going, the film does, it's not in the same way as Logan Lucky, and it's dull. And also, like with its predecessors, its twists and turns towards the end aren't out of nowhere. Okay, maybe the twist about them stealing. Spoiler alert, by the way, for this ranking later. But the twist about stealing all of the jewels kind of came out of nowhere, but it makes sense in a way, and the plot around stealing the one necklace, which turns out to be a distraction, yeah, that works into the form of the story. Whilst Logan Lucky, it just chopped some bits off and then just told everybody how they actually do it afterwards, instead of kind of bothering to show us, or at least be interesting in the same way as this film or the other Oceans films, for example. They do their twists and expand on the actual heist a little bit after the completion, when we see it in full time, and then they go back and show it how it's actually sorted out. With the Oceans ones compared to Logan Lucky, they kind of do it pretty well, because you're seeing quite a lot being done at the start, and they kind of show afterwards how it's done in a clever way. Whilst with Logan Lucky last year, for example, any film that kind of does what that one did, it just basically showed parts of it, and then it just showed other parts, and it wasn't really that interesting. This one was a bit more interesting, because I'm not sure, it kind of was, again, out of nowhere, but felt interesting, definitely, to me. I suppose it was the fact that we got to see most of what was going on with the one necklace, that they were making it look like they were only after. They were making it look like they were going to be after only one necklace, whilst it looked like it was only going to be one necklace that they were going to steal, and that's how the film was making it look like. How it was supposed to appear. The idea of them going after all the other necklaces when they talked about how they did it, that kind of makes sense, because we were seeing how the stealing of the necklace, we were supposed to think they were only going after that one. So we saw how they did that, and then we went back to see how some of them got the other ones, whilst the events of the main one were going on. So that was interesting, certainly, and I thought it was well done. Like I said, build up is quite a lot. And yeah, one thing, some things I don't quite get. First, one thing I didn't understand is why Lou, Kate Blanchett's character, she just parks a van and then gets on a motorbike, and then the next scene she is standing in her kind of costume looking at Sandra Bullock's character, Debbie Ocean, in the street, and then they're back at the house. Lou was the one who was taking part in the secondary robbery, so to speak, and she probably dumps the van just to hide the evidence. But considering she had an accomplice hidden in the van, who we'll get onto in a bit, it's not a woman. It's a nice surprise return of a character from the original trilogy. But considering that the van was where they had the jewels and the accomplice in a little box, and then she just gets on a motorbike and then she just turns up on the street, it's a bit confusing. I would have had her just park the van somewhere, then we see her in the street, and then later going into the flashback, we see the van parking, then they get the accomplice, who I'll mention in a bit, out along with the jewels, and then he gets his custody share, or he's promised a custody share, maybe an account or something, or an email, and then Lou goes to see Debbie, and then they go home. So, yeah, that was just a bit confusing. To me, so that shot of her just getting on the bike, I think what we could have had was just, well, my idea could have been a bit better. Just make a bit more sense, and it works in wrapping up the story. Speaking of the filmmaking wise, there is another bit I want to talk about that's not character related, it's just filming. We've got a kind of, at one point, I think it's in the first hour, I think it's just before, it's when Debbie and Lou agree to start to do the, to steal the jewels, and they start planning it. It's just after the diner scene, when they're having breakfast. We see the camera panning over Central Park in New York. It's going quite slowly. Then when it's trying to zoom into the gallery. It's kind of panning, getting closer to the gallery, and then just before the end of the shot, it zooms in quite quickly into the gallery. I kind of had a bit of a issue with that. Either speed up the entire bit, or go quite slowly until you get to where you need to go, and then zoom in. Maybe not so fast as well, by the way. Not too slowly, but zoom, but not too fast, not too slow. I wasn't a big fan of how they did in this one, but maybe they could have sorted out in the edit. I think the edit was the problem, because I think it left it to the camera work. I think the build-up would have been a bit faster, and the zoom-in would have been a bit slower. But the editors just thought, fuck it. I will also say, with plot, there is some bits where it's, it's typical heist film. It's a bit uncertainty. However, some things in this one are pretty clear and how they work, and that's pretty good. I will say though that there isn't that much threat. One thing that Logan Lucky had over this, and also the original trilogy as well, is that they were the thieves in those films. They were more likely to get caught. Especially in Ocean's 12, which they kind of did, but that was part of the plan, and one bit in Ocean's 13 as well, and maybe kind of one bit in Ocean's 11, but that might have been slightly unintentional. With this one, I didn't really feel like they were that. Apart from a few moments, I didn't think that they were going to get caught that well. I thought they were doing it. They were pretty safe from being caught. The closest is probably when James Corden's character shows up. But the next closest is probably with the security guards around the bathroom. But I think that was fine. No, actually no. A bit after that, when a security guard is down in the kitchen with Mindy Kaling's character chopping up the bits of the necklace, and then they find the fake one. Sarah Paulson's character pulls out the fake one out of let's just call it the water, out of the water, and they just panic over. Still goes. I think that was the closest time. Then James Corden's character showing up, and then just having the security around. There really wasn't that much that they could have caught, and the way they could have gotten caught, besides those moments, was Daphne Keane. Was it Keane? Yeah. Anne Hathaway's character noticing what they were up to, which is what she noticed that, and that's how they could have gotten caught. Had it not been for a stroke of luck that Daphne had joins the team in the second half, she becomes kind of an accomplice and eighth member of the gang, excluding the accomplice I mentioned that we'll get to later, and anyone else helping them, like Rhiannon's character's sister. So yeah, that was a nice twist, to be honest. And it kind of worked. It's not like Terry Benedict joining Danny Ocean's gang in Ocean's 13. He was still a bit neutral. No, this one is kind of like the supposed, not really the bad guy, but the one they're stealing from. It's the one they're stealing from, but then in a kind of a twist, they actually joined the team, and officially this time, and become an accomplice, more or less, slash team. And then once it's established Daphne is on the team, she becomes a bit more, she kind of becomes a bit more important to the next stage of the plan, and therefore becoming a proper teammate, I suppose. And yeah, and so, but besides that, there is no level of threat. There is very little threat. You cannot. There is very few times where you think the characters are going to get caught. They've got backup plans as well. They really are that great at what they do. Maybe it's better than some of the boys. In all fairness, we shouldn't judge a book by its cover. And they even say in the film that girls don't usually get noticed. So, and that's the point. If they got a man on board, a man would get noticed. So that's why Debbie dismissed the option to have a guy, even though they kind of do get a guy to help them later on. But A, he's great at what he does, and B, he's in the original trilogy, so everyone's happy he's here. And C, he's not part of this main gang. He's part of another main gang, but not this one. But you can see where Debbie's coming from. In men, they do kind of get noticed a lot, especially the criminal ones. Whilst the women, they can easily hide away in the roles that they're playing in order to get the jobs done. And I think this one proves that well, even if it's a bit too well done. I think if they're going to do sequels, I think they will be doing 9 and 10 if this one does well. I think they've got to up the level of threat in 9 and or 10. It's like, again, going back to Ocean's 12, they kind of got caught as part of their plans. That was intentional, more or less. So something, maybe not like that, but up the threat, up the threat. In Ocean's 12, as I was saying, they had the European Bureau, I think. It's like that. It's like the biggest police in the world, but Europe. But it's got Europe instead of. It's in Europol. That's it. It's Europol. That was in Ocean's 12, and you had them on the trail of the criminals in the film. So something along those lines, maybe if they wanted to do that, or another gang trying to outdo them, or like again back to 12, but otherwise just make it look like they're going to get caught a little bit more. They will get away with it in the end, but make it look like they're going to get caught, or somehow have them wriggle out of a situation that they haven't really prepared for. And I think the closest to that, we got something like that with this film, they had a snag in their preparations, and that was the magnet on the back of the necklace. They needed to get a magnet to take off the necklace. And that was actually fixed pretty quickly, because Rihanna's sister, as I mentioned, not Rihanna, her character, Leslie, or aka Nineball, her sister made a kind of their own magnet for them to use to take it off, and it came off pretty quickly when Constance used it on Daphne. And Constance is Affrica's character. I probably botched the name there, and also Mindy Kaling's one. Actually, no, I think that one I got okay. Maybe earlier I botched it. I apologise for doing so. So yeah, the threat levels aren't very that high, and that thing about the magnet, well, as it was resolved so quickly, you pretty much couldn't really need that subplot. That was the only really reason you could have it was to show it, show such a thing, and also actually also be once it unmagnetizes the necklace, it's easier to take the necklace off straight away, I suppose. But other than that, it's kind of pointless because it looks like it's going to be a problem, and then it gets resolved like that, like literally within a minute or two. Heist movies, they kind of take a bit longer to sort problems out, or that's like earlier, they were taking their time to sort it all out to start with, and then they just adapt to the problems, like adapting to the security, adapting including Daphne on board, adapting to having to get somebody else in to help them with stealing the jewels, well, unless that was always part of the plan. But despite some logics with the plot not being so good, the characters are really good. Starting with Debbie Ocean, who's pretty much worked it every single detail out while she was in prison for the past five or so years. She does a really good job, and Sandra Bullock does a great job performing the character, and also she does a fantastic. Is it Swedish? It's German Swedish accent. She's posing as one of them, a German or a Swede. I think it's supposed to be Swedish, but I'm not sure. That's what I got. It was either German or Swedish. It could have been Norwegian. It could have been Danish, Finnish, or even Swiss. Let's say Scandinavian, which doesn't include Germany or Switzerland, but the other ones do. Other ones are. She does a very good Scandinavian, Central European accent, so that props to her, and she kind of looks like someone you get. I'm cutting this bit out. That almost became a bit offensive and stereotypical. Let's ignore that. Kate Blanchett also does a good job as her partner in crime, Lou, who's like second in command, and at some points kind of even in command. But she does a really good job and poses as a diner, a caterer, really. Then we've got the first person they hire is Rose Vile, played by Helena Bonham Carter, who in this film is putting on an Irish accent for her character, and she's the dressmaker, and she's the one who trying to get the people to allow the necklace out so Daphne can wear it at the ball, at the dinner. And so yeah, you can blame her for having the necklace out of the vault, more or less. Then they hire Mindy Kaling's character, who's kind of like a diamond expert. She goes into the kitchens, and then she takes she has the necklace, she takes it into the toilet, and then not into the toilet itself, just into the room, and then kind of puts it into little pieces as part of their plan to frame the character Claude, and then to sell off the other bits to make themselves some money. This is also another point around here. They've got the equipment to cut up the pieces of the diamond in the toilets itself, so they've had to go in there to put that in already, because their toilets don't do that. So they must have gone in early to slot that in, maybe when the shift started. But so that's another plot point I must mention. Next, they get Nineball, who is a very good hacker to speak. She doesn't even have to be on the same computer to access the files or anything. Well, not access files, to move the cameras. She just has to get into the system, and then she's in control. That's very good. Maybe a bit too good. It does work out quite a few problems, but does do quite a few things. And I also mention around here that Debbie does quite a few of the stuff herself. I should have mentioned that. Debbie does quite a few of the stuff herself. She does the foot walking bit, and she gets the guards to put extra security up in the museum with a distraction by Sarah Paulson's character, who is next. Mindy Kaning's one. I think her name was Amy. I'm not certain. I think that was her name. And Rihanna's was Nine Ball. Then you got Sarah Paulson as Tammy, I think, who is a retired thief or cat burglar or something, who still collects a lot of stuff anyway. As in her garage. She was last. Sorry, she was last to be hired. We'll just finish up around here. She's mostly hired to be in charge of the ball, not the ball, the party. Basically, she's kind of representing Vogue on the representation of the sorting out the party, and she's in charge of finding the fake necklace in the pool, so that they don't have to worry about this stuff upstairs in the other room being stolen by Lou and the accomplice who we'll get to. She does a good job as well. I like the fact this one's got a family and has to kind of like, oh, this is Mummy's very special trip, even though the kids aren't that great at acting, no offence. And the daughter in one bit is like, I'm hungry, but I want to eat now. Ooh. But they're young, so I won't be harsh. She does a good job, and before they get her on board, they have Whittaker's character, Constance, brought on board, and she's a pickpocket, so she can easily slip things in and out of the room. So she's able to slip off the diamond necklace off Daphne, and then slip it onto the tray for the mule, the kind of butler character, who then unknowingly transports it over to Amy. I think it's Amy, I'm not certain. It could be. Although there is one bit where Tammy has to go in to tell him off for talking in the middle of the corridor as he's stalling for time with another guy. Then that's the 7 team members, and then you've got Daphne, played by Anne Hathaway, who is basically a spoiled little brat for the most part, until it's revealed she's a criminal. Well, not criminal. She's joined the team. Yeah, Daphne Kugler is basically a spoiled little brat. A spoiled brat in her 30s or 40s, that is. Kind of full of herself, pompous, bit icky. At one point she's like, yeah. When she's trying to get a point done, she's kind of full of herself. But then she joins the team, and she's actually pretty okay person. She is a bit lonely, so that's why she wanted to join them. So then she helps out, so she could be seen as a likeable-esque character. There's also some bits, I think her character's also quite horny in some scenes. Sorry. First of all, when she's trying on the necklace for the first time, so, come to mama. Oh. And then we see a bit of her snogging Claude at one point whilst at the party, in a flashback. And then later on, she gets him to come round to she comes around to his place so that she can frame him for the theft, and she gets pretty horny at some points. Literally, she's almost going for it. We don't actually see them going for it, but it's the start. Basically, if they went full out, it probably would be a 15 or an 18 rated film, which I wouldn't have minded. Yeah, so she can be a bit like that. I think she is okay though. I think towards the end she'll be a bit more likeable than before, and I think they will probably keep her as kind of like the spoilt, has everything, and now also has friends. So they'll keep her character like that, but they'll probably try to make her a bit more likeable as she helps out the gang in other thefts. Basically, she'll be like the accomplice, also like I guess Tess in Ocean's 12. And Linus's dad in Ocean's 13. So she'll probably be a bit more likeable in the future films, if there is any. you got Claude, who's actually the guy who sent Debbie to jail. They were originally a pair conning people, and then they got caught, and then he testified against her to save his own skin, and she went away for 5 or so years. And then once she got out, she kind of threatened him a little bit, I guess. No, kind of just to tell him she's out, and she won't accept any shit from him or something. And then it's revealed part of the plan is to get revenge on him and have him sent to jail, framing him for committing the crime whilst they get away with it. And surprisingly, Daphne's okay with this, considering she was snogging him in one scene, and she's fine. She gets to probably get it on with him just before framing him. So I would have thought she'd been a bit more upset or a bit restrained and not completely certain about this bit. It's like, wait, you're going to frame my boyfriend? But I kind of like him. I kind of like enjoying our time together. Even if I don't have a 100% romantic attachment, I still like to sleep with him. So I'm surprised she didn't object a little bit more. Maybe it's because she didn't apart from also going to jail for a association, but also the fact she was going to get paid and the girls were friends. Maybe she didn't really care that much about him, but she probably thought she could get another guy like that. But I don't know, I just felt it a little bit odd that she kind of didn't feel like, wait, hold on, that means I'm not going to have a guy to fuck anymore. But I really liked him. Oh, alright. It wasn't even like that. She was like, oh, the boyfriend. Okay, I'll frame him for you, as long as I'm allowed to sleep with him first. Or something along those lines, probably. Well, the first bit, definitely, but the other bits, probably. I think Richard Armitage is Claude. He does a really good job. He does a pretty good job. And we've also got James Corden in the film as this kind of fraud expert. Now, this is where the film turns into, like Logan Lucky, we kind of get this additional subplot with somebody trying to check it out. And we didn't have that in the original in the other Three Oceans films. It was just the heist or heists. And apart from Europol coming after them in number 12, there was barely anybody checking it out. So, but Logan Lucky, they had the FBI on the case for some reason, and they spent about 20-30 minutes on that subplot, and that probably made the film even worse. And then it went nowhere. And then one of the FBI agents went on a date with one of the characters, so rendering it completely pointless. And now with this one's a bit better, because, well, started, it's only one person checking it out. Second, James Corden actually gives one of his best performances. He's kind of pretty serious with some comedic elements earlier on, and then he gets a bit more comedic, but with pretty serious elements still in. And he's not around for too much. He's like 10-15 minutes total of screen time, and it only takes up about a similar length of time in the film, maybe slightly longer. But it's not like Logan Lucky, where they spent about the last half hour of the film focused on trying to find it and all that complicated revelations. This time, the last 20-30 minutes, they kind of wrap it up pretty well, and they explain the other stuff pretty well, as I mentioned earlier. And Corden's character is pretty good, and his investigations are some of the highlights into the film. And when he's interviewing everybody, it's quite funny having the busboy kind of admit he's doing drugs. And on the second viewing, I actually kind of picked up on that in his conversation in the hallway. So that was pretty funny. And then he talks to Daphne about Debbie Ocean, saying that she's the one person who should be a suspect but isn't. And then he meets Debbie a bit later on after a visit to Claude, and then Debbie gives him the proof he needs to frame Claude. Thank you, Daphne, for providing said information. And so, it's kind of James Corden's character who gets Claude busted. Well, framed. Busted. Well, busted after being framed, that is. And yeah, that's it. There's two other characters of note to mention before we wrap up. The first is, and they're both from the original trilogy, the first is Elliot Gould, I believe, as Ruben, who makes a nice cameo early on in the film when Debbie is at the cemetery, and he comes to see her a bit, and they talk about Danny. And yeah, we only see him for that one bit. Oh yeah, something else I should mention. It's established very early on that Danny Ocean is now dead. Yep, they've killed off the main character of the original trilogy. I'm not sure why, and also, he dies in 2018, so he's died whilst Debbie was in prison, because she references this, that he is now dead. So obviously, she got the news while she was still serving time, and then she goes to visit the cemetery after a day after coming out, and that's where she meets Ruben. And she's like, "You better be dead," because she doesn't believe it quite yet, although he doesn't pop up later on. So by the end of the film, she's having a drink at the cemetery, saying that he would have loved what's happened. So maybe by the looks of it, looks like Danny Ocean is officially dead. It's not said how or why. He just is, and there is a picture of him on Debbie's desk about halfway through the film. So George Clooney kind of makes a kind of appearance, but in picture form, photograph form. And the other character to return from the original trilogy is Yen, the little Chinese guy who could do acrobatics. I can't remember the actor's name, down below, but he does a good job. He's important to the plot. Hopefully he gets a cut of the share, whether it's keeping some of the diamonds or getting a share of the overall money that they spend along with the other 8. But he's kind of integral to the plot, and I was thinking early on when watching the first film, it would be quite useful having a guy like Yen, a little guy, to get into places like this. They do use Yen. So he's helpful. He gets the job done. And the scene where Lou buys a submarine, that's important to the bit where they steal the other jewels. That was useful. That was good. So, and it's Yen's the character I said we'll get round to talking about in a bit. Yeah, that was a nice surprise. I was, however, disappointed at the fact Matt Damon's Linus character Linus did not return. I think there was speculation that he was going to be back. He was going to appear in this one. There was rumours how it should have ended had him at the end of their Oceans Over 40 trailer. I think people were just expecting. I think Wikipedia had him listed, but I did not see any signs of him. Not at all. Not one. And if there was, he went uncredited, obviously. But he might have been hidden in the background, but certainly no proper upfront appearance from Matt Damon. Certainly not as Linus. So Ruben does kind of say they thought I would be the best one to talk to you. So kind of referencing the others, for instance, so like Rusty and Linus and the others. So I mean, he's probably still around, just that he doesn't appear, that's all. Maybe he was originally going to be the character who comes over to talk to Debbie, or helps out in the heist, but in the end, they either chose not to, or they couldn't get Matt Damon in, so they had to get Elliot Gould and or the actor who played Yen to reprise their roles. But still, oh well, there's always the sequels. In fact, you could even have you might even be able to have an Oceans crossover in the far future. Oceans, let's say Oceans 23, if we have 13 or so teammates of the original plus 10 of this one, if we get up to 10, and then they all come together for a big team, maybe Ocean's 23 or Ocean's 24. Actually, it might be 22 with Danny dead. So, yeah, oh well. So, wrapping up. Well, I think Ocean's 8 is actually a pretty good film. It's fun, it's entertaining, it's intelligent, it's smart. The twists and there's some nice twists that do come out of nowhere, but they kind of make sense as opposed to in your face not in the face, like what the heck out of nowhere, like Logan Lucky's. No, these ones, they're out of nowhere, but they make sense. And you know, and going on a second viewing, it kind of does work a little bit better. So maybe 2 viewings was helpful. Like again with the Ocean's trilogy, that was a bit helpful. Overall, great characters. The story could have done a bit more work, but it went well. There wasn't a huge amount of threat, but it still worked more or less as a kind of an execution-wise. It still worked, and also the filming and editing in this film was better than 12 and 13, especially 12. Oh god, I think that was trying to do a Bourne film way of doing that. Good grief. So yeah. So this one does a really good job. It's not completely perfect, but I thought it was really good. When I first saw it, I thought I'd give it an 8 out of 10. The rewatch kind of made me think maybe it should be a 9. So I'm going to give Ocean's 8 a 9 out of 10. Yep, and so far at the moment, it's currently my 8th favourite film of the year out of 12. So, yeah, appropriate number. The 8 is the appropriate number for this film. For positioning and ranking wise. So, that's it from me. Stay tuned for my Oceans 11, 12, 13 and 8 rankings. My Oceans ranking, excluding the original films. Just the George Clooney, Sandra Bullock films. So, thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye. Don't forget to click below to subscribe to the official Nicholas Payne YouTube channel. Not certain. In the end, I decided to stick with the 8 out of 10. So Ocean's 8 appropriately gets 8 out of 10. Yep, appropriate score for an appropriate titled film.